Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, I need my peepers on. There we go. Today's lesson is the third in our series, my series of assignments in my field ministry program toward ordination as a unity minister. And in this process, I have been examining my personal belief systems, my Credo. Credo, as I've mentioned, is Latin for "this I believe." And as I develop and articulate my belief system, I also measure those beliefs against their functionality. Does my belief system work for me? Is my life happier, healthier, more prosperous? Does what I believe and how I perceive reality bring me peace and comfort? Does it help me live my life? And by extension, I hope that you resonate and find value. This week's topic is the nature of God. But as I prepared this lesson, I discovered that the question, does this help me live my life? It's a little less tangible than the other topics of my credo. It's a little harder to answer yes or no, and because it's a more amorphous question. I realized that my beliefs about the nature of God, that I had not developed these beliefs myself. I have not experienced them directly, but instead I adopted these teachings from others. When I say resonate with, the old science experiment, grade school science experiment, where you take two tuning forks, they're tuned to the same pitch. You strike one and hold it close to the second, and the second one will begin to vibrate with the same pitch. I resonate with these teachings. I resonated with the Fillmore's teachings and the New Thought or other unity movements' collective wisdom. I chose to see things this way. That's not unusual. In our discussion about revelation, experience, and reason, I said that we could resonate with and participate in the revelations of others. We could try on, as an experiment, the wisdom of others. And we can discover a truth that works for us. So is my credo, my beliefs about the nature of God, functional? Yes, it works for me. And as your minister, I pray that the God of your understanding works for you. The true nature of God is ineffable. That means too extraordinary, too extreme to be expressed or described with words. The best we can hope for when discussing the nature of God is synonyms and metaphors. So we use words like light and life and love, spirit, divine mind. I contend that any words that we choose to discuss the nature of God, God nature, any words we choose are third best. New Thought teacher and writer Joel Goldsmith has a book entitled Beyond Thoughts and Words. That actually comes from an old Sanskrit phrase, beyond Dhamma and Rupa, beyond thoughts and words. The allness of God is beyond thoughts and words. Ineffable. That's first best. The second best is direct personal experience of God. But no words that I've found are adequate for such an event. Maybe wow. I cannot describe my spiritual experience with words and expect someone else to understand. So, what we end up talking about is third best. I find it more than a little ironic that I've spent almost 40 years trying to find the words to describe the indescribable. The nature of God is a foundational question. It is the first principle, a fundamental assumption. A fundamental assumption that we cannot deduce further. Aristotle defined a first principle as the basis from which we know something. First principle thinking is a fancy way of saying, check your assumptions. Think like a scientist. A good scientist doesn't assume anything. If the nature of God is foundational, then we must begin with our assumptions about God. There is a probably apocryphal, probably made-up story about early space travel and an astronaut on one of the first flights to outer space. When he returned, a reporter asked him if he had been to heaven and seen God. And the astronaut replied, yes. Astonished, the reporter asked him for more. And the astronaut said, well, first, she's black. There is a simple reality that when we speak of God, most people will conclude that we are talking about the biblical image of God. It is a graven image of a paternal, authoritarian, beneficent tyrant, an old white man with a long white beard and an occasionally unpleasant personality. Western churches and synagogues present this image of God, and we accept it under the pressure of social consciousness. When we use the word God, our Western minds immediately go to our embedded theology, the graven image of a man with a long flowing beard. As spiritual seekers on the path, it benefits us to examine our image of God closely and, like a good scientist, question our assumptions. We must get a larger concept of God. The God concept that has prevailed through the ages has to die so that we can find ourselves in God's presence right here, right now. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "When we have broken with the God of tradition and ceased to worship the God of our intellect, then God fires us with its presence." Many New Thought teachers avoid using the word God at all for this reason, because of that old white man in our heads. Ernest Holmes of Science and Mind, now it's called the Centers for Spiritual Living, Ernest Holmes used the phrase, "the thing itself," instead of the word God. Emma Curtis Hopkins, considered a teacher of teachers, placed primary emphasis on the concept of good as a synonym for God. She said that the word good, G-O-O-D, is the only valid definition of God and the only authentic experience of God. She said that if you take the word God for your starting point, you will not be so near the foundation feeling in your mind as you will if you take the word good. She had a favorite affirmation. I am seeking my good, therefore I am seeking my God. Unity's first premise concerning the nature of God is that God is absolute good. In his book, Keep a True Lent, Charles Fillmore writes, God as principle is the absolute good expressed in all creation. Now, we usually think of good as the opposite of bad. And in a religious context, good is the opposite of evil. But God, as absolute good, has no opposite. In his play, Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 2, William Shakespeare tells us, there is nothing either good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. What we call bad or evil is the apparent absence of good. There is no such thing, no such power as evil. Just like there is no such thing as cold or darkness. I wrote it down wrong here. There is no such thing as cold or darkness. Now, anybody who's been through a Nebraska winter is going to challenge that question. There's no such thing as cold. What we experience as cold is actually the absence of heat. An air conditioner or a heat pump, we're buying heat pumps, an air conditioner doesn't work by adding cold into a room. It actually works by removing heat. What we experience as darkness is actually the absence of light. We cannot shine darkness into a room. We can only turn off the light. Each week, we say that there is only one presence and one power in my life and in the universe, God, the good, omnipotence. What we perceive as evil or evils, they are not entities, they are not things or powers themselves. They are the apparent absence of good, just as darkness is the absence of light and cold is the absence of heat. But God, or good, is omnipotence. So the apparent absence of good, that which we call evil, is actually an illusion. It is unreal. It is not a power in and of itself, separate from, apart from, and opposed to God. Therefore, it has no power over us. Just as the sun moving across the sky is an appearance, relative to the earth, the sun stands still and the earth moves. but we still perceive the sun rising and setting. God is absolute good. It has no opposite. In her book, Lessons in Truth, Emily Cady writes, God is not a being or a person with life, intelligence, love, or power. God is that invisible, intangible, but very real something that we call life. God is perfect love and infinite power. There cannot be two infinities. It's either God or it's nothing. God is the total of all of these things, the total of all good. Another synonym we use for God is divine mind. You've got a mind, I've got a mind, all God's children's got a mind. But in truth, there is only one mind. In her 1929 classic book, What Are You?, Imelda Shanklin writes, there is only one mind. That mind is the mind of God, in which individuals have intelligence. There is only one mind in all the universe, God mind. God mind is the source of all intelligence. God mind is the source of all divine ideas. God is not a being that has all knowledge. God mind is all knowledge. God is not omniscient, all-knowing. God mind is omniscience, all knowledge. All the knowledge there is God. We call God substance, the real thing that stands under all creation. Sub, under, stance, to stand, substance. God is the page on which the universe is written. As we look out across the cosmos, we would not see the twinkling lights of stars if it were not for the invisible blackness of space. The astronaut was correct. God is black. God is light. God is life and love. God is spirit and substance and divine mind. And God nature is within you. But any words we choose are third best. God bless you all. All right, this is our opportunity, yours and mine, to pour out the gift of God from within us through our tithes and our love offerings. And can we share this offertory blessing together? Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I am joy-filled and grateful. Thank you, God. And you can send your gifts, your tithes, your love offerings to paypal.me/UnityLincoln. That's paypal.me/UnityLincoln. And you can also send your gifts through the mail or through a bank transfer by sending them to Unity Lincoln, P.O. Box 30209, Lincoln, Nebraska 68503. You can also send your gifts. You can also bless Unity Lincoln by going to our webpage and finding a convenient link to donate via PayPal. And also remember to like us on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. And give and God gives it back to you. Give and God gives it back to you. Give and God gives it back to you. Pressed down. share this affirmation for our church family. Together, Unity Lincoln is blessed to draw the people, funds, and all that is required for the health and growth of our community and peace in the world, heart to heart. And we are making great progress